my opinion, is that research is just a bind. It's a pain. It's a great way of procrastinating
Indeed.
and deferring.
It can become absorbing in itself.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it also takes up a lot of time, and it can take you away from the really important business, which is letting your imagination function. And too much research can hobble and sort of distract and bury the imagination. But there are certain things that I do research and that I'm very clear about. The first is the calendrical, the calendar. It's very important to know where your character is in time. This is not the same as being chronological, which is also important, and which we'll come to. I make decisions about my characters as to where they are in time. And I will not want to write, it was Tuesday the 23rd of April 1964, unless I know...
It was a Tuesday.
It was a Tuesday.
Absolutely. Mm.
If it's the 20th century, I'll go to Dorling and Kindersley's Chronicle of the 20th Century and get the day. Yeah. And if it's 19th century and earlier, I'll go to newspapers and get the day. When I'm thinking about characters, I will make calendrical decisions. I will say to myself, this person, I'm going to choose a day for them to be born, and that as a result of that, I will then plot, and I will do a little bit of research to make what I plot coherent, but not too much. I will then plot their life. I will decide when they go to school. I will decide where they go to school. I will decide probably when their parents were born and how old their parents were when they married. I will decide when they leave school. I will decide what job they start and when they start that job. I'll sort of make a list. So that is a calendrical list, which is I know where they are in time, but it's also a chronological list because it has the forward impetus of somebody's life. I may not use that material in the story, but it's necessary to know it in order to write the character. So this is what I call research. And there may be things like, if I'm writing a story about a stoker on a steam train in the 19th century, on the train going from Dublin to Ballina, let's say, I will find out a little bit about being a stoker on a steam train, but not too much. The other thing is that I will also want to be cartographically or topographically exact. So the other thing, besides making a list of the character or characters' lives, biography with dates, I will make or obtain a map. If it's a makey-uppy story completely, I'll draw a map based on maps that exist. If it's a story that is taken from real life, I'll go and get the Ordnance Survey map or a map. But the map that I get will be the map that was the map at the time. So if I'm writing something set in, Tralee in 1930, let's say, I will get the street atlas for Tralee of 1930. Today's will be useless. It has to be the 1931, not the 1920 or the 1820. I will get the map that relates to the time in which the characters I'm writing about live. Now, why the obsession with the map? Because I haven't started writing yet, but I'm still thinking. Once you know where people are in space, all sorts of things suddenly become incredibly clear. Well, actually, she can't run home and tell her mother that her father's, fallen into the river, because it would take her an hour and a half.
Yes.
It's just too far. So we've got to move the house closer to the river, or the river closer to the house, or whatever. You suddenly then begin to realize what is and is not credible in terms of what you've sort of vaguely begun to imagine is going to happen. And you will make changes and adjustments.
I think very much you're getting a sense here from the various things that you do before you even start writing, obviously you do your exercises with the character and to sort of find which tense you're most comfortable in, but these are all structural elements that I think will give new writers very much an idea of, rather than sitting there staring at the blank page, that they have a structure, that there is a structure there that they can apply to their ideas to really get them launched.
A way of thinking about the process that I have found useful is as follows. writing something is quite like assembling a mosaic. You are very close to the surface and you are dropping your tiles. And your tiles have different colours, and gradually, tile by tile, you're assembling a picture. Then, when you have assembled all your tiles and stuck them down and grouted them, you step back and you can see your picture. It's been made up of all sorts of little tiny things. And those little tiny things are your sentences and your paragraphs and your lines of dialogue. They should be as simple and clear and straightforward and unpretentious as possible. You then step back and you can see all your tiles and you can see what sort of a picture you've made. Well, you know, the nose will be on top of the head and there'll be an eye and the chin, and actually you'll then have to go back and rearrange, and then you'll step back and you look at it again, and you might have to do that 10, 12, 15, 20 times before you've got it. And you will also in the process decide to discard a lot of the tiles as well. But it's useful to think about it in those terms. You are making something out of lots of little individual pieces. When you write, make your sentences as simple as possible. Make your sentences as short as possible, in my opinion. Don't go for complicated grammatical solutions. Now, something else that will help you. Poets talk about the liberation of constriction. If you have to write a sonnet, it has a very precise form. It's 14 lines, there's a rhyme structure, there's 10 stresses per line. That's all you've got. So in fact, you're not operating in a world of limitless choice. You're operating in a world that is extraordinarily restricted. And in fact, the psyche responds to restriction by offering ingenuity. Knowing and setting your perimeters for your story can be liberating. Limitless choice is probably the most hobbling and the most disabling thing, because there's just too much ground to cover. So if you say to yourself, I'm writing a first-person narrative, you're only ever allowed to have what that character sees or hears or is told or dreams or reads. You can't have anything else. That is actually quite liberating. If you write a third-person story, you can be sort of like that, which is that you restrict what the characters know, but you can be there's a little bit of latitude for getting in exposition. The thing I'm trying to emphasize is that if you make a decision about a structure, whatever the decision is, it will, in the end, pay dividends, because there are things you know from the outset you can, and more importantly, you know there are things you cannot do, and you just have to stick to those rules.